The time's going to pass either way. So you decide. You're going to spend your time and money on something. You're going to spend it on your health or you're going to spend it on your sickness. Which is it? Because it's going to get spent. The moment the intention is set, then the universe conspires to assist us. So people will show up, opportunities will show up.
Meet Ava. She's halfway through her run, her feet pounding the treadmill, her jaw tightening with thoughts about work racing faster than her body. Ava is a senior designer at a fashion company, and she's built a reputation for high standards, discipline, the kind of discipline that gets things done. But lately, she's felt disconnected from all of it. For months, she's heard her intuition screaming, build something on your own. You're meant for more. But fear keeps cutting in. She has a stable job, gets a regular paycheck, and if she were to start something on her own, there are no guarantees. It's just her and the terrifying uncertainty of making it on her own. What makes it worse for Ava is that growing up, she was always the one, the ambitious one, the disciplined one, the one her family believed would make something of herself. She would push against the limits people placed on her. She was always strong, outspoken, unafraid. But this is different. This isn't about proving people wrong. This is about taking a huge leap. Ava doesn't just want another job. What she wants is to be able to tap into her creativity again. She wants alignment. She wants that feeling of freedom. Today, I'm speaking with Dianne Allen, nationally recognized speaker, host of the Someone Gets Me podcast, and author of 10 books. Dianne helps gifted, high-achieving people reconnect with who they truly are and step into a more authentic path. And I can't wait to hear how Dianne would help someone like Ava to trust her intuition, to reclaim her creative power, and move towards the life that's calling her. My name is Jay Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. So Dianne, one thing I learned about you from our last conversation and learning more about you from your website is you've always been a visionary. That's the way you've always been. And when you were younger, you felt as though you weren't feeling heard or understood, and you wanted to work through that. So take me back to that younger season of life when that realization happened.
Oh, wow. I think the first memory it was always that because I always thought I was adopted or something like I didn't belong, like even on Earth. But there are two big times where it was like pivotal. One was I was in third grade, and I don't remember what happened at school, but I remember coming home and crying because something was wrong. And jumped in my mom's lap, and she goes, "Oh, honey, you're different than everyone else." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I didn't know what to do with that. And I remember thinking, I really am different. I don't know what to do. And all these teachers would be judging me and I didn't know. And I was really sensitive and I was confused a lot. So I'm very introverted naturally, but I ended up being really, really shy and kind of shut down soon after that. Then later on in high school, I think it was academics that kept me going. I love to study. I love to research. I've made straight A's. I love that. So I think was my coping skill. And when I was in high school, both of my parents were pretty aggressive alcoholics and life was a little bit chaotic and crazy. And it was right around the time when those helplines were starting to show up. And so I remember them advertising it all over, and I wrote the number down, and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I'll talk to them," because my mother would listen to all the other kids in the neighborhood, but not to myself or my brother. And so it was always confusing to me. So so this one night, they were fighting and it was crazy, and so I called that number. And first they put me on hold, and then they came back, and then they said, "We're sorry, we can't help you," and they hung up. And it was in that moment where I vowed that nobody would leave my presence not feeling heard on some level, because that was devastating. Because the message was, "You're not worthy. You know, we can't help you. You're too far gone, or you're not worthy, whatever." It wasn't until many years later that I reconciled all of that. But I kept getting these messages that there was something wrong with me and that I was too sensitive and all of those things. And so it was during college when I started realizing that that was an error on the big people around me when I was little.
Mm.
Mm.
Now you said that you felt different. What do you think was the thing that made you feel so different than everyone else? Because yes, there was that aspect of not feeling heard, not feeling understood, which could be hard to work through for anyone. What is it about the way you felt like you were wired or the way that you were, I don't know, showing up that was different than others that you were spending time with, whether in school or at home?
I could see through everything. It was my intuitive ability, I thought everyone had. So I didn't realize that not everybody could see what I could see. And I didn't know it was a gift. I didn't even know the word, but I always knew everything in advance. It was very interesting. I look back on it and go, wow, no wonder people were afraid of me. No wonder people looked at me funny, because I knew a lot of things before they even happened, or I could sense what was really going on with somebody, and they would say one thing, but their energy was something different, and I would know, and I would just say it, you know, because I was naive. I used to laugh and say that I was gifted with a level of naivete, because when I was younger, I just thought everybody was like me. I had no idea that the visionary skills and the intuitive skills that are just natural in me are not in everybody, not in the same way, you know? And so people looked at me like, God, how does she know that? Or why does she know that? Or I have a memory where I can remember exactly what is said, what you were wearing, how you were standing, where we were, like all of it, like it play back the movie, which my brother didn't like very much because I could remind him. Oh, yes. But that's how I made straight A's in school too, because I would look down at a test and I could like look up and in my mind's eye see the teacher writing the information on the board or see it in the book, however I assimilated it, and exactly write it down.
Mm. So when you said that you were someone who you were very much into academics, and
Mhm,
I was reading about you that you really got into the research behind all of this.
mhm.
And I'm curious as to what you found. I guess what's the reason why you have this ability, Diane?
Well, the reason that I believe is that it's a gift. How it happens or the way the brain works, I think my system is highly sensitive. It's, in fact, in one of my books, I call it intensely sensitive, where there's a level of intensity about the sensitivity. So it's like tuning on a different level. The way I can describe it best, I think, is average people are watching like a regular black and white little portable TV. And I, on the other hand, am watching 3D stereo surround sound. So their reality
Mm,
is different than mine, period.
mm,
You know, so I see and experience the world much more acutely and see patterns. My pattern recognition is amazing. And and so I think we come into the world with a neurology that is atypical. Our growth is um, more of a, I guess I would call it an asynchronous brain development, whereas
mm,
most people would think people develop in a certain way. People like me that are highly visionary and very sensitive, we tend to grow in different ways. I mean, it eventually all harmonizes out, but I think that the trajectory from the time I was born is very different than a lot of regular people who don't have the same sensitivities. And I've met other people that have other different sensitivities from me, and their trajectory was different than mine. So I've learned over the years that, I mean, that you hear the word neurodivergent all the time, but I also learned over the years that I think everyone's neurodivergent on some level because no two of us are the same. And so when
Yeah.
we really realize that we have autobiography, we have sensitivity, we have neurology, we have biology, and we have the way we're built, all of those things make a unique, whole, amazing person that comes with a totally awesome, I think, a constellation of ways to do things and process the world and see things. And I think once, we as humans really embrace that, there'll be a lot less low self-esteem and anger and fear and pain.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that you're saying to embrace all of it. And when you do embrace it, I think it's helpful to acknowledge that everybody has their own way of seeing the world.
Mm,
And there isn't a right or a wrong.
right.
You recognize what is your way of seeing the world. You
Mhm.
acknowledge that it's not the same as everybody else. And you tapped into the superpower behind it.
Yes.
And I think that that's something all of us can do, whether one is very sensitive in the same way as you, or maybe they're seeing the world through a completely different lens.
Right. I came to understanding it through a spiritual way, through metaphysics, through studying metaphysics. And I do a lot of work with neuroscience researchers because I'm a neuroscience geek in real life. Always have been. In fact, I loved it before people called it a thing, like because I'm old enough where they weren't using that term back then. But I love it. I love the science. I'm a geek. And I remember that the neuroscience team I work with at University of Florida, they came to me one day and they said, "We figured it out. All the DNA that holds the trauma is different than the DNA that isn't." I'm like, "Well, welcome to the club. I've known that my whole life, It's so I love that science is supporting something that I learned not through science initially. I learned it through metaphysics. And then all the science I'm doing now supports the things that I experience. So to me, that's so powerful that the answer is yes on both counts. It's not one or the other, it's yes. And I think that when people learn how to embrace that in themselves, then they have a whole different quality of life and a whole different understanding because it's not A or B, it's yes.
I hear you. And I can geek out with you, Diane, on the neuroscience of things. I love to learn how we can take things from the scientific community and consider how we are putting that into our daily lives and what we experience and what could be deemed a spiritual experience, we can explain through science often.
Yes.
And so I'm curious to get a little bit into what often holds us back from living that full life and tapping into that superpower, because I know that this is a big part of what you help people work through. What have you found that really holds someone back, or has someone feeling stuck in a place where they aren't really activating that best version of themselves?
That's a multi-layered question. Part of it, I think, is belief systems that we learn 75% of our belief systems before we're two. And most people are learning the popular belief systems that probably don't work for the visionary person or the person who's gifted or the intuitive person. They're outside that. They're in a standard deviation away from the mean. So they don't work very well. I think that's part of it. And so I examine with my people a lot of belief systems, like what do you believe about what you're supposed to do? Do you believe that when by the time you're 30, you should have 2.5 children in an SUV and white picket fence, or like what's it supposed to look like? And then we find there's all kinds of belief systems that somebody's running on that they don't even realize because they're pre-verbal. So we need to look at that. Then there is the fear of success first, and then the fear of failure. Like, what if I
Mm.
do pull it off? Then what? And a lot of times people have a toxic definition, operating definition of success. So it's kind of like if I make a lot of money, then that means I'm bad or I've used people to get it. Now, it may not be conscious, but it's in there oftentimes when I watch people sabotage themselves. I go, that's fear of success. Like, what does it mean really to step into being a successful human being, whatever your definition is of that, and be okay with it and not
Mm,
recoil from the very thing you're seeking?
yeah.
And I see in highly visionary, creative kind of people that that's a big issue is they're trying to fit into a landscape in the world, in an inner landscape that isn't how they're built. So it's a
Yeah.
real mismatch. So I do a lot of work on let's get yourself in alignment so we can let the flow happen, and then let's see where that goes in your own unique personal rhythm. And
Yeah.
it's never gonna look like you think, Jay, never. People
Well,
say,
yeah,
"Oh, it's always better," right? But it's not that. Whatever you're thinking, that's not it. It's better.
yeah, well, I
Yeah,
really resonate with this
yeah.
personally, Diane, because
Mhm.
I grew up where my mother, God bless her, would often paint that picture of people who have a lot of money are greedy, they're no good, and it's better to be humble. And don't get me wrong, my mother wanted to make money. However, I feel like she programmed me in many ways unintentionally
Right.
to look at that and say, well, I can't be one of those people that are the high powered, very wealthy people because then I am evil or wrong or greedy. And I have to say, Diane, it's taken a lot of work personally for
Mhm.
me to shift out of that belief system.
Right, because the belief system was in your mom before she taught it to you, so it's intergenerational and it's nonverbal. So until we can put language to it and understand it, that's when we have the power to shift it. But look at all the years that you were living under that, not knowing that it was there. Exactly. Like that's what's holding you back, you know? Because humility, people think humble means, to be walked on or whatever, but humility means of the earth. It means being a grounded person with your feet planted on the earth. It's a compliment. It's not a negative thing of like, be humble and let people walk on you. So in some cases, people have just an error in their definition of how they operate with certain words, so
Mm.
it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it is. And I
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
that the work that needs to be done is, I mean, it's not always easy, but it's always worthwhile to be able to realign one's belief systems. What
Mhm.
are some ways in which, Diane, you recommend people to do that? If, let's say, they come to that realization, hey, I have some belief systems that no longer serve me. How do I reprogram myself and upgrade my own software with better belief systems?
Upgrades are necessary. The first thing I have everybody do when we run into belief system issues is to write if then statements and tell them to write them for the whole week in between meeting with me. Like if this, then that on everything, big and little. And to start seeing the correlation of when their brain says this A thing is happening, B must happen. Like I was working with this couple and they got married. They were engaged for a long time and lived together, and then they got married, and then everything went south fast because they started operating. When you're married, the man takes out the trash and the woman that makes dinner. And neither one of them actually really believed that. But the old program that was pre-verbal from both of their sets of parents showed up the moment they got married. It was irrelevant when they were dating because in married life, this is what you do. So sometimes it's just starting to identify all of the things. And the reason why I have people do everything they can think of is because our ego is not our amigo, and it will run interference and try to get you to believe and hold on to the old toxic things. But if you're doing everything, it doesn't know what we're looking for. But I know what we're looking for. So I tell everybody, you just write it all down. I know what we're looking for. Just trust me on this. And then when they start sharing it with me, I can see the flavor. I'm really good at putting it together for them. And then I'm an excellent question asker. And so I'll be able to come around and ask a question that their ego cannot defend. And in that moment, they have the opening for the aha that they wouldn't be able to get on their own because their ego is not their amigo and it's running the programs and it doesn't want to let go of the programs. There's a part of us that's comfortable. It's called familiar pain in my world. It's comfortable because we know the rules, not because it works.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think what, I imagine the exercise being, if one were to attempt to do it on their own, I do agree with you, though, having someone such as yourself would just move it along so much faster. You'll get so much more out of it because you're not just stuck in your own head. How I imagine doing that exercise is if I write down this if then scenario and there's some sensitivity there
Mhm.
as I write it.
Mhm.
If I, ooh, there's a little bit of an emotion associated to what I wrote, or if I wrote it and I want to challenge it and there's that sense of resistance that's coming up, that's something to dive deeper into.
Absolutely. I call it a rub. If you get that little rub or then that
Right.
there's a hint right there. There's a clue. Or when somebody
Yeah.
says, "My intuition said, but I ignored it." Oh, there you go. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah, intuition is such an interesting thing, Diane. I find it to be a fascinating experience when it comes up, and I also get people who often tell me they are unsure as to whether something is intuition or if it's something else, if it's a fear, if it's just an emotion, and they struggle to be able to discern what's true intuition and what's just a fleeting emotion. How do you guide people, Diane, to be able to really discern that difference and be able to more effectively tap into their intuition?
First of all, with a lot of people, I tell them to trust their gut because when I use the word intuition, some people have that unconscious belief system that it's woo woo and it's not. So sometimes I just change the language a little bit to make it friendly. And then I tell everybody your intuition comes in a way that's not your typical. So all of a sudden you'll have an idea, but it's not your normal language set, or it comes in differently, or there is an energy or a feeling that you're not used to, but you notice it. And so therefore there's meaning in there and it's starting to
Mm,
show the way. And the more you trust it, the more it shows you, right? I believe it, the more I can see more of what's trying to happen. And so I have a lot of my people. I have this one person I'm working with who she's so intuitive, but didn't even know she was intuitive. She didn't even know she was gifted. She didn't even know she was a visionary. And now she sees it. She goes, "You saw it in me all along." I go, "Yes, I did." And so, but what she started doing in the very beginning, because she just couldn't wrap her mind around it, even though I could see it, was I said, just journal it every time you get a hunch on something, just journal it. Like so and so is going to call me, or this is going to happen, or what about that? Just write it down. It doesn't have to be formal because it's more of just to recall it because our brain doesn't remember it properly. And sure enough, she started, "Oh my gosh, look at this, look at that." And she started seeing that what I was already seeing. She started to see that there is a part of her that's tuned in on that level, which is one of the reasons she had such a hard time in her corporate jobs because they expected her to be brain on a stick, basically, without all of the gifts she brings to the table. And we can't separate the intuition and the vision from the human very easily without the human suffering greatly. So it created issues, but then that was the gift that helped, propel her forward. It's pretty cool.
mm, that is very cool. And I feel like with my own experience with, I'll go with the trusting of my own gut
Uh-huh.
way of explaining it.
Mhm.
I feel like it was something that some training did help me to be able to identify
Mhm.
the gut feeling and then to act on it. And the
Mhm.
training for me was mindfulness meditation, being able to really quiet the mind and be able to listen. Because I feel like if I look at my life in two halves, the first half where I never did any of this stuff, I never practiced meditation, I was just riding autopilot, it was probably coming in and I didn't notice it, Diane.
Sure.
And then
Absolutely.
when I started to really listen, maybe it was always there and I didn't notice it. It's possible. And now that I was noticing it, I was more able to effectively act on that gut feeling, which led to a lot of positive results.
Exactly. And you could also notice that when you got the gut feeling and you didn't act on it, you didn't listen to it, the consequence of that. And so that's one of the things when I was talking with the person I just mentioned is, look, you knew, but you didn't listen to yourself. and look at the consequence. So
Yeah.
sometimes people, when they can correlate it, or they correlate it with, I listened and look at what great thing happened, or what opportunity showed up, or whatever it was. And then they get reinforced. And then we start seeing that it's always been there. It was there. You were born with it. It was always there. But when are we ever taught to slow down and listen? In fact, we're more and more in our society taught to be more and more addicted to things outside of ourselves. So going within and paying attention to us and who we are and how we operate is foreign to a lot of people.
Yeah. You're right. It is. I do think it requires a lot of intention. It
Mhm,
really requires a ton of intention. And if we go to what Ava's experiencing in this story, I think she is sensing it. She's sensing
mhm.
that she needs to do something, and she has some doubts, some fears, some of them related to money. She has a secure job, Diane. She wants to be able to have that sense of security with her financial situation. What are your thoughts on how someone works through, I guess, some of the natural doubts and fears that are related to the financial part of acting on your gut?
Well, I know when I was thinking about that with her, I'm like, well, there's a couple different ways I would approach it depending on where we were in the conversation. And one is that when you think about it, when we have all this fear of money and are we going to be able to make it? That's a real thing. And it normally comes from somebody who had a chaotic or unstable childhood, and so they have survived a lot of heightened survival things. So first, I would check on that and see if that was an issue or not. And then I would say, let's get perspective on money. All money is pieces of paper with pictures of dead people on it. It's it's the assigned value that gives us that emotional hit, all right? Because it's really, in and of itself, it's nothing. It's what we've turned it into as a society and personally, right? But we still have to survive. So first, we want to take the power away, the fear power away, and go, okay, well, if I'm going to create something amazing and magical, then let's get practical about how we're going to pull that off. And clearly, she's already successful in her career. So she's got the skill set to be successful. Got that. Now it's about how do we bridge being successful with being able to live in alignment with who she truly is. Because I think that the pain she's feeling and that angst is because she's now out of alignment where she was growing, 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 and now it's a mismatch. So what do we need to do to get things matched up? And be reasonable about it and have a plan. So I have like to have people have like kind of a trajectory. Like, what's the plan? Okay, if I know I'm going to do my own business or do my own thing, well, first of all, what do I need to do that, whatever that would look like, and then let's come up with a rational, reasonable plan with consistent feedback loops. And I think that having consistent feedback pays off. Like, how much money do we have saved? What's the reality of it all? The truth is that people who are really skilled, if they launch out on their own and they don't like it or don't want to do it anymore or whatever, it's not that hard to go find some other really cool thing to do that may or may not even be on our mind right now. That's why I always say it's never what we think, it's always better. And so she might think she might be doing like her own fashion business, but what if she started going out there and she saw that she really loved consulting with other designers outside of her doing it? Maybe that would even be more lucrative and more fun and more freeing. Or what if she wanted to do travel things? There's so many other things that go with that industry that she's not even able to see because she's caught up in the spiral and the chaos and the stuff, the static of where she is. So when she starts kind of decompressing, getting back in alignment and listening to herself, her transferable skills and her ability is far greater than she can see. And
Mm.
who's to say that there's not something amazing in that part, the part she can't see yet? And so that's where faith and trust comes in. Like, okay, can I trust myself? Can I trust all of this? I know I don't belong where I am because I wouldn't be feeling this way. So I'm like a bird getting pushed out of the nest. I can hang out in the nest all day long, but pretty soon it's going to be really painful. So I want to,
Yeah.
like I want to need to find a way. But my experience with all the people I've worked with is it where they land when they transition from these kinds of situations like Ava's in into their own enterprise, whatever that would look like, their own brand. I always say, brand yourself whether you go work for someone else or not. But what's your brand? Like, what's your handshake look like? Do you wear the same colors? What are the things that represent you? So if someone was to see you, they would immediately know who you are.
Mm, yeah.
Whether who you're working for, how that plays out is secondary. Like, who are you? Like, what are you bringing to the table? And then the right opportunity shows up. And it's never what we think. It has never been what we think. My own work is not what I thought it was going to be. It's much better. It wasn't in my radar that it could be this great.
Diane, I could relate to what you're saying. I
Yeah.
I remember when I first left corporate, I thought I would be in consulting and I would be creating training programs for organizations. Then I thought, okay, I'm going to create this membership model to my website and people will sign up and it would be this community through online learning that I'm creating this platform for. I don't do either one of those things now. Yeah, I
See?
don't like right. I don't do any, but I will say your point really hits home for me, which is I took the step in a direction and it led to another
Mhm,
opportunity. So I think the visual that comes to my mind for our listeners is it isn't like there is this road that you're on and then there's this other road that just is never ending and it's dark and you're like that's going to be the road I have to stay on for the rest of my life. That's not how it works. It's not binary. It's
mhm.
you're on this road and if you decide to go onto a different road, what's going to happen is you're going to then get to another fork in the road and there's going to be 5 different ways that you can go down and you can go down one, you don't like that one, you can go down another one and then you'll have another fork in the road and there will be other options that you could choose from.
That's right. And with momentum, once you start stepping into it, with that momentum, then yields more opportunities, more forks in the road, right? Like I raise sailboats. If we don't have a little momentum, we can't steer. We have to have a little bit of pressure to
Yeah.
steer. And so once we start doing that, you never know who you're going to meet or where they are. I just moved to Winston-Salem not long ago, and I'm like, there's nobody like me here. Like there have to be people like me, but I can't find them. And then I went to some online free thing just for kicks one day, and one of the people lives in this town, and we hit it off right away, and now we're friends. Like who would figure? I would never have guessed that, but I put myself in position to try things and check things out. And then the right opportunities show up. I just have to listen and pay attention.
And there seems to be even the way you just described that there, Diane, there's has to be some level of trust,
Mhm.
right? There has to be some level of trust, trust in oneself, trust in a higher power, even. Talk to me a little bit about how trust plays into all of this.
For me, trust is about consistency over time. That if I listen to myself and I pay attention and I do the right thing and I'm an honorable human being and I live by the standards that I set for myself, the right things will happen. Right as in correct, as in higher, as in good, not necessarily black, white, because I don't see the world that way. But I pay attention to just, okay, am I doing the next right thing? What's the next right thing? What's the next right thing? When I wake up every morning, the first thing I say when I open my eyes after I say thank you is what's mine to do today? And whatever mine to do today is could be more meditation, it could be journaling, it could be anything. It could be any combination of things that my heart feels is important. And so as long as I stay in alignment to the best of my ability, then the right thing happens. The right people show up. And we have to be willing to say yes. That's where the trust for me comes in. We have to be willing to go, uh-huh, I'll try it. Like I tried that thing online, which I don't normally do. And I don't know why. My gut said, oh, go. What difference? It's not going to hurt you. Go. And then my ego was arguing, but my gut said go and my head said no. And no, I listened to my gut now. And so I went and I met that person. And if I'd have listened to my brain, I would have not met that person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's
It's that
There's a
consistency,
component of
yeah.
yeah, and there's that component of, hey, the mind is helpful in many ways.
Mhm.
It's amazing how the mind works, and it doesn't mean that you need to listen to every thought that comes in and believe it to be the word of truth.
Correct.
Like, right? If right, because you can hear the thoughts around, well, that that probably would just be a waste of time. Don't go to that free dinner that you went to. There's not going to be anybody there that's like me. And if you listen to that, you would have never made this friendship that you made.
Mhm.
And in Ava's case, she could listen to those thoughts around, well, it's just too much risk. Now's not the right time. That's a big one, right? Now's not the right time. However, the thoughts that enter one's head, I believe we need to have an adjustment to the relationship with those thoughts and be able to listen to them with respect
Mhm.
and at times challenge them.
Oh, absolutely. Because that now's not the right time is the funniest thing. I used to say that to myself, and now I just laugh when someone says that. I go, yeah, yeah, sure. The time's going to pass either way, so you decide. And I go, you're going to spend your time and money on something. You're going to spend it on your health, or you're going to spend it on your sickness. Which is it? Because it's going to get spent. So pick the direction, pick the energy field, right? And you can change your mind at any time. Always reserve the right to change your mind. And sometimes that helps a lot with really highly intelligent people because they think, like you were saying a little while ago, they have to stay on whatever road they pick forever. And I'm like, you're not marrying it, you're dating it. If you don't like it, change your mind.
I love that. You're not marrying it, you're dating it. That is such a good way of putting it. And,
Right?
Diane, I really believe, like, okay, now is not the right time, that phrase, right?
Mhm.
Well, right now, you are either growing or you're shrinking right now.
Mhm.
I mean, that's really you're going in one of those directions. To move into the direction of growing does not mean that you need to make this ridiculous crazy decision where you drop everything, you put all that risk, because you described it wonderfully, Diane. You gave someone you give people a practical approach to thinking about their finances, the steps that you would take. That is in the direction of growing. It doesn't require Ava, let's say, to go into her manager's office and quit right now
Right.
and take this huge like that. No, you can move in the direction of growing by planning for things with logic, with a very clear picture of how you're going to be able to make this work financially.
Well, right. And when you set that intention, and the moment the intention is set, then the universe conspires to assist us. So people will show up, opportunities will show up, bright ideas will come. And so, I have a lot of people that keep their own bright idea journal, when they're getting ready to make a big transition, like just write all the stuff down. Some of it's not for you, some of it you'll give to somebody else, but you don't know yet. So just write it down, whatever you do, keep track. But, you never know. And so just setting the intention of this is what's going to happen. I'm eventually going to be in a place where I'm autonomous. I can stand in my sovereignty in a way that serves me and others, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, whatever that looks.
And once and once we do
Go ahead.
that, everything works because it
Yeah.
starts showing up little by little by little. It's not an overnight thing most of the time. The things that look like they're overnight were decades sometimes in the process.
Yeah. And what
Mhm,
I also want to acknowledge for our listeners too, if you're not the person who likes to write things down, just I open up a voice recorder on my
mhm,
phone and I'll just start talking into it. That's what I do, Diane. That's
mhm,
my process of what you just described. I'm not always the big journaler. I'm auditory. So for me, I'll just be in the sometimes I just feel like I need to do it. I'll just be in the car and I'll just talk into this phone for 20 minutes. And it's just stream of consciousness, but it's
mhm.
all related to what you said, which is where could I be taking this? And then bright ideas all of a sudden hit me.
Right. And
Something
when
that I didn't think of all of a sudden erupts into my consciousness.
Right, and so when you're doing that talking, I do the same thing, especially when I'm on a long road trip. I can hit my voice activation in my car, go, "Siri, take a note," and boom, or I just hit the voice recorder and boom, and I just start talking, talking, talking. But what happens is when we're doing that, we are clearing out the fluff. and underneath it is the gem. So we have to be willing to clear out the foam and the fluff and the static in order to see the gem that's trying to emerge. So I always imagine something beautiful trying to emerge, like a lotus out of mud or something, right? Like something beautiful is trying to emerge. And our job is to clear out the stuff so that that beauty can show up. And so I think that when those of us who love to talk into things, on my assistant does the same thing. We're like, yap, 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 yap. But the answers always appear when we do that. If we don't do that, we're not listening to our gut. And now we're adding anxiety, depression, strife, stomach problems, sleep problems, because we're withholding and we're shoving into our system things that need to be expressed.
Yeah. It's like we're adding layers of like clouds
Hmm.
to block the sun, right? It's just like
Exactly.
adding more and more clouds. The sun's there. It's
Mhm.
shining. You just
Yes.
need to remove the cloud cover, and that's true for everyone, Diane.
Mhm.
Truly believe that. What I think is also an interesting part of the story I really wanna be sure I ask you about is how Ava feels this, sense of guilt with her family. So she's the most celebrated of the children. She's the one where she's put up on the pedestal by her parents, and gosh, starting something on her own, leaving a well-paying job for pursuit of something new, there's a guilt that comes up in her. How do you recommend people work through that? The pressures of loved ones, of family and friends that could affect one's
Mhm.
ability to make that decision.
I have several things for this one. The first one is, I don't know which order to share these in. One is to understand that love of family, specifically close people like that, love can be the biggest barrier sometimes because the people who love you the most don't want you to hurt or fail, so they project all their own fears onto you. And your vision is not their vision, and they can't see or understand that. That being said, and then I always tell most people that to not tell them until it's done. And then when it's done and you're successful and they have figured out that you did this and you're successful, they will be the first people to say, I supported her and it was wonderful and it was great. That sometimes how close the relationship is creates more of a barrier, and not because anybody's trying to create a barrier either, but because if I'm the mom, right, or the dad, and here you are the celebrated one, and that I was the celebrated daughter, so I get that part. And when I said, and I'm doing this over here instead, it was like they didn't know what to do with that information. And when I stopped talking about it and I just kept doing it anyway. And then once it all came about and it was a thing, they were like the happiest people. They bragged about it to everybody. But the way I ended up getting outside of that family belief system that was holding me down is by not saying anything yet to them, to the people that would try to hold me down because they didn't know they were trying to hold me down. They weren't doing it out of malice. The other thing I would say to Ava is, what's your definition of guilt? Because most often people don't know what guilt really is, and so they use that word and they beat themselves up with something that's not even a thing. Because guilt means I broke my own rules. So is Ava following her calling, saying yes to her gut, following what she feels is the right thing to do in a reasonable way, and being responsible and being a good steward? Is that breaking her own rules? Now, that comes back to those belief systems because she might have a rule belief system that says you have to have a 9 to 5 corporate job in order to be successful, or it has to look like this in order to be successful. But what's coming through for her doesn't look like that. So the guilt shows up that it's not matching, or same thing with the belief system of the family. So that's where it really matters of what do you really think it is. A lot of people say, "Well, I feel guilty about this. I feel guilty about that." And then when I say, "Well, what is it? What tell me where you're breaking your rules." "I'm not breaking my rules." "Well, then it's not guilt. It might be fear."
Yeah.
It might be grief because grief is a conflicting, massive emotion following any significant change of behavior. It could be that, but it's not guilt if you're not breaking
Yeah.
your own rules, unless you have a belief system that is running the rule that you're unaware of. So now you're feeling guilty about something and for something that you're not conscious of yet. So now we loop back around. Okay, what's the belief system that is fueling this guilt? Like I have to please my mom and dad. Is that a belief system? I have to do what they
Mm.
say, but I'm an adult. But they say be happy. So here's all these messages and these ways of being that Ava needs to look at and say, okay, well, which is the higher truth here? And
Yeah.
how can I be respectful of my relationship with my parents and respectful of the people who love and care about me? And most importantly, honor and be respectful of myself. And so how can I do that? And those are the effective questions, like how can I do it? Because there is a way. It's just sometimes it looks different than we think. And once we can get out of that like limited perception or that belief it has to be a certain way, then we start seeing the opportunities, we start seeing things. But typically it's not it's not what people think it is most of the time.
It's I like the rule that you're breaking.
Mhm,
It's a funny thing because oftentimes, I have this conversation with my wife,
mhm,
Alex, where, she's like, "I can't do this because of this." And I often ask her that question, like, what's the rule that you created that you feel like you're breaking?
right.
Because right, there's and she's feeling guilty about it. And I like the way you circled back to, well, if you then change your belief, then your rules change. And then when the rules change, there's nothing that you're breaking. That rule was illusory to begin with. It wasn't an actual rule. You created it within your own mind. And then what you said before, I was smiling quite a bit about how much you tell your loved ones about what you're doing. Because I talked about my mom just a little while ago,
Mhm,
and my mom is loving and supportive, and she's one of the best people. I'm so fortunate to be her son. And when I made some decisions within my own career, if I had kept telling her about every step of the way, I think that fear that she would have projected onto me would have held me back in some way. So instead,
mhm,
Ma, things are going great. Everything's wonderful. I don't need
mhm.
to get into all the detail. I don't need to explain the whole thing. She's not the right person for that. And now, yes, she is the biggest supporter of me and saying I was celebrating every step of the way, right? It's just so true what you said. It definitely is something I experienced.
Right.
And so, well, Diana, what I'd love to invite you to consider is if you were to meet Ava in this story, and Ava, let's say she reached out to you and set up some time to have a one-on-one, and you hear her story and you have an opportunity to ask her a question or two to help her through this season that she's in, what would you ask her, Diane, and why?
Oh, I would probably ask her a lot of things. The first thing that pops in my mind that I would ask her is kind of a statement slash question, and that would be, help me understand how you would feel once you start living the life you desire. What's the feeling that you would be
Mm,
experiencing? That would be the first question. I would really want to tune in not only to what she says in that response, but what she doesn't say, and to pay attention to if and then if she's holding herself back from like actually seeing and feeling it, to talk about that a little bit. And I would also ask her about self-respect, you know, tell me
well,
how doing what you're doing moving forward would improve and increase and enhance your self-respect. And then what would that
that's
do for your
powerful.
life?
Yeah, that's powerful. That's a really It's a positive challenge. That's how I imagine, like, you're challenging them in a very positive way, or challenging Ava in this case,
Mhm,
in a very
mhm,
positive way, to be honest with herself,
mhm.
of how she's living relative to what would be the authentic life that she should be living or could be living.
Right.
Yeah, Diane, this was phenomenal. I'm so glad that we did this. And for our listeners, I really encourage to go to missdianeallen.com. That's where so much can be learn more about the work that you're doing. You can even schedule a call directly there. And of course, your phenomenal podcast is there as well for people to be able to check out. That's MSDIANNEALLEN.com to be able to learn more. Diane, thank you so much for your time today. This was such a powerful and meaningful conversation.
Oh, you are so welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I am all charged up now. It was a great conversation, Jay. Thank you.
Diane's podcast, Someone Gets Me, is fantastic. I was a guest on that podcast, and it felt like she and I could have spoken for hours and hours. So I hope you got value out of the conversation. I will do my best to synthesize it as I do. 3 insights, 3 actionable takeaways. First insight: 75% of our belief systems are formed before the age of 2. So before you even could speak or even question anything, your belief systems were programmed. Those programs were installed in you. That's a valuable information for you to know. The second insight: guilt isn't a feeling, it's a signal. So often it's fear or grief in disguise. And it only exists when you genuinely break your own rules. So you got to question the rules. Third insight: the people who love you most can sometimes be the biggest barrier. And they don't mean it. They don't have wrong intention. It's not malicious. However, they often project their fears onto you. So you need to be mindful of that. Actionable takeaways. First one: write if-then statements for an entire week. If you do, every belief pattern, if this happens, then it must mean, you'll notice what are some of the programs that are running in you, some of the outdated ones, that need to be reprogrammed or overridden. Because if you can see them, if it's revealed to you, then you can start to work through them. Because those beliefs, that's what's ultimately driving you. Second actionable takeaway: journal or voice record your ideas, especially when in transition. A lot will come out. I mentioned how I do this in the conversation. A lot will come out, but that hidden gem will be revealed. You just need to talk it out or write it out. And the third actionable takeaway: announce your vision only when the decision is made. Meaning, if you fleshed it out and you say, okay, this is where I'm going, that's the point when you announce that vision. Because if you're still in the brewing process, someone could say something to you that can hold you back. Only announce it to the people you love, you care about, when you've decided in your mind, this is the direction that I'm going in, and you hope they will support you, but be prepared for their fears that may be projected onto you. Join us on Friday. I'm going to do a deeper dive into creating that vision. We're going to look at the 3 areas to take inventory of when it comes to how you craft your vision so that you can be your authentic self and activate your strengths in a way that will have a positive impact on the world. So if you are feeling stuck about what's next for you, Friday's episode will help to provide clarity. So until next time, thank you so much for listening.